Hey, everybody. We're really excited to have TJ Nelson here from Las Vegas, Nevada. TJ was born in Utah, traveled all around the world, and is here today to talk about his Lyme journey and what he's done to get better, and the book he's written, Walk the Lyme, to help you in your journeys as well. We're also here with Ashley Marba, who's my special guest co-host. Ashley, not only has she been on the podcast, and she was on episode 17, one of the early ones, but she's participated in our 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 Lyme hackathons, where she provided specific tips and tricks on your Lyme healing journey. And we encourage you to go to our website, tickbootcamp.com, and look all this up, where it's all on there on our website, where you can learn more about Ashley and also learn more about TJ on this podcast and all the show notes and information we're going to put out there for this podcast as well. So TJ, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, good to be here.
So TJ, we talked about you growing up in Utah. We really want to get to know you and what your life was like before Lyme when you were a young child in Utah. Can you give us a little background on what that was like?
Yeah, no, childhood was good. I was very active, played all the sports, healthy family, the whole thing. So, childhood was no issues really, right? And so I was very healthy, very active, and very adventurous soul as a kid.
So when you were a kid and out and about and playing around, did you know about ticks? Were you ever bitten by a tick that you remember? Did you know about the risks of ticks and
Nope.
Lyme disease, et cetera, et cetera?
Nope. I didn't even know about Lyme disease until I got it. So I had no idea what it was.
So you weren't even looking for ticks. So you could have been bit and you wouldn't even known it.
Wouldn't have even known.
So were you're an average? Sounds like you were an athlete. Were you an average child? Were you more tired? Was there anything unique about your childhood?
Um, my family would describe me as intense, is what they would say. But no, I was very curious. Like I guess as a kid, like I changed the Windows programming so it had a different sound when it booted up when I was like 8 or something. I was always skateboarding, snowboarding, playing hockey, baseball, all of it. So a lot of energy as a kid.
So really smart, really athletic, physical fitness, living the life, right?
Yep.
So what happens when you graduate high school? Where do you go to college and what comes next in life?
Yeah, I mean, high school, there was a lot of stressors. A little bit, well, actually, I think it was like right as high school starting, or junior high. But yeah, parents split up and then my brother passed away. So high school was a little more of a rougher, depressing time. And then as I graduated high school, since in high school I got really good grades, I got a scholarship, went to University of Utah, bounced around a few different majors and graduated with psychology. But I was basically had to get a 3.7. So I was just studying all the time and working all the time. Didn't do like the traditional college kind of life. And then, just started working. There's some wild stuff after that, but that's
TJ, before we get to the wild stuff, TJ,
yeah.
When all this happened, and it sounds like you were in high school transitioning to college, and your parents split, your brother passed, and I'm sorry for that, by the way. Was there any health impacts or anything going on with your health, or was it mostly just things going on with your family that were stressful in your life at the time?
No, health was fine. You mean there was like some mental health stuff going on, depression and kind of weird stuff like that. But no, my favorite thing to do was to lift weights. I ran a marathon. So yeah, my body was still good.
Do you think that you were using exercise as a means to overcome some of the depression and your emotional feelings? So that's a very common theme we've had on this podcast, where people will over-exercise or over-depend on exercise to get relief from psychological distress. Do you think that's something that maybe you were doing and that was weakening your immune system? And I know it's kind of a deep question, but we see this as a common thread on this podcast.
I don't think it was never extreme. I was never going so hard that it was hurting me. I know it started out with insecurity with how I looked, but then it just became, hey, I love doing this. So I don't think it was necessarily a bad way to cope. Lifting weights is just amazing because in the morning you lift weights, cool. The rest of the day is good, right? And that's actually the main thing that I'm looking forward to, is being able to work out again, lift weights, and do all that, so I can get that endorphin rush. But no, it was never unhealthy. It was just exercise was a way of life. So
now talk to us about, you graduate. I think you said you went to the University of Utah and you're majoring in psychology, correct, TJ?
Yep.
You graduate. Are you going to get grad school, or are you going right into the workforce? What's happening then?
No, I just started working. I was working at National Alliance for Mental Illness. I worked at some clinical research facility. But then it hit a certain point where, I was just broke. I was living in low income housing in Salt Lake City. There was some weird stuff going on in the place I lived. And I hit a point where, I didn't want to be poor anymore. I went to the Philippines. I learned all this stuff, started selling cars, and then I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand and lived it up in Thailand and Vietnam for 8 months, doing online business and trying to do that life. But then I got bad food poisoning and my gut got wrecked, and then I had to come back. So
So
that was like the start of the health stuff.
you went from being a psychology major, working in the mental health field, but it wasn't cutting it financially speaking. So you left the country, you went to Thailand, you went to Chile. What kind of online business were you running out there?
No, so it's interesting actually. It's still up. It was a website called dominatedepression.com. So with all that, the high school and the college stuff, they tried giving me Paxil and various things, and that works for some people. But it didn't work for me. And I read all these books, and it was like, oh, I'm deficient in vitamin D and magnesium, and I shouldn't eat gluten. And when I stopped doing that, it helped a lot with the symptoms. So I was trying to do like a passion project to give back to people and show them other ways. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't making any money though. So I was helping people, but it wasn't making any money either.
Well, I love how you were hacking your health before you even got Lyme disease, because it sounds like you were using diet and supplementation to overcome some of the psychological symptoms you were experiencing in your early 20s. Is that kind of what you're describing here?
Yep.
So I guess I really want to ask a personal question. What was it like living in Vietnam and Thailand coming from Utah? I mean, what a shock that must have been, right?
I loved it. Thailand, the people are too nice. It's almost too easy, too relaxed. You could get really lost and just chilling for the rest of your life. Vietnam was just this raw, chaotic yet friendly, loving place. It was bizarre. Like the first week, I hated it because it was so polluted. And when you have to walk across the street, and there's just a swarm of scooters, and you just have to walk right into it. And you have to keep the same pace, because if you change your pace, you'll get hit because they're just going around you. So it took me a while just to be able to cross the street. And then after a week, I just fell in love with, like, if Vietnam wasn't so far away, I'd visit all the time. Like one of my friends was on reality TV, got famous. There's a place they named an omelet after me. So you can order a TJ omelet on Nguyen Thi Minh Khai Street in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. And it was wild. It was like, I got a haircut and it cost $2.50.
And
Yeah, it was insane. But yeah,
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But yeah, the Vietnamese people, the culture, they were still working hard, but they still placed family first. So it was this interesting vibe of, hey, being friendly and nice is number one, and then work ethic. And so, I'd be walking around and someone, hey, you want some tea? And then we sit down, start talking. Cool. See you later. And it was just, yeah, I want to go back now. Just talking about it.
well, I don't think it's like that here in the States, at least in New York. Ashley, is it like that over in Santa Barbara, California, where you are? Actually, I don't know.
Well, I wish we would embrace some of those cultures. Like, how beautiful and amazing. I feel like just that alone would help with a lot of depression and loneliness, and having a sense of community. And that's like, where you just sit down and you have the time to be friendly. I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And then it was more compact. So like where I lived, everything I needed was within a block. So you just walk out and it's just everything. Boom, 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 boom. Right. So, states, you got to drive everywhere, most places. But yeah, it was wild. That's the main things I miss, is being able to travel and being able to exercise. And once I get those back, that's when I know I'm 100%.
We're going to get to where you are now. And I know you've made significant progress. And we're going to talk about all the things you did to get where you are now and what you're still doing and continuing to do. But where were you when you got the food poisoning? Was it Vietnam and Thailand? How long were you, out of the States when this occurred?
So I actually got food poisoning bad in Thailand, and my gut got messed up. So I wasn't digesting food. Then when I went to Vietnam after, there's this place, we called it prison pho, because it was in some alleyway and it had so much MSG, you'd get a headache from it. And then I got sick eating there. And at that point, my stomach was so bad. I was like, oh, I gotta go home. And so that was the beginning of the health. So I didn't have Lyme yet, but my gut was compromised, which then means everything else is compromised.
So your body was becoming more and more susceptible to get chronically ill from Lyme disease, and this is sort of setting the stage for what's to come. Unfortunately, sounds like.
Yep.
So, did you stay in Thailand and then Vietnam, or did you eventually end up back in the States? Walk us through what's happening next in your life and what you're doing for your career, because it sounds like you started this website, but it wasn't doing well. So how are you surviving? How are you paying the rent, paying the bills, and just living your life out at this time?
Yeah, so I went back to San Diego. I couldn't figure it out there. So then I go to Utah, then I run to Colombia, and I only lasted 10 days because of the gut problem. So then I had to come back. Then my friend in Vegas, which is interesting that I'm back in Vegas, but he hits me up and goes, "Hey, you're good at sales. You should sell solar door to door in Vegas." And I said, "Sure." So he came, picked me up, drove me down. I slept on a blow up mattress next to him. Started selling solar door to door. Vegas shut down. So after 3 months, I went to Texas. And at the time, the company I was working for was the largest one. And in a certain ranking, I hit, the top in the country. And I hit all these super high highs in that field. But that's where the Lyme started.
A couple of follow-up questions. So how long was it from the time you left Utah and went traveling the world before you landed back in the States? What was that time frame?
So I was in Thailand, Vietnam for 8 months.
Okay. And then you came back and you landed yourself in Vegas, and that's where you started you were selling solar. And then is that when the COVID shutdown occurred? And that's when you went to Texas? Is that what you said?
No, so this was in 2015. The utility company in Vegas actually shut down solar, so you couldn't do solar anymore. And so then we had to go to Texas. And so, yeah, and then that's where all the sales stuff went down. But yeah, about a year and a half into it, then I got sick. So
before we get there, though, tell us about friends, family, loved ones, etc. So what else is going on? Do you have any family that you left behind? Are you developing any relationships? And what's that like, managing all these relationships while you're bouncing around the world?
Yeah, I mean, I moved so much that, I couldn't really date because I'd only be in one place for so long. People kind of, I think were like, wow, TJ the wild guy. And then me going to sell solar door to door in Vegas, it was just one of those random things that I was doing. So, I mean, they were just people. I had a lot of friends, and family, but people just knew that TJ was going to do what TJ was going to do back then. So, yeah, wild man living out of my backpack, just wherever I wanted to be.
So Nomad TJ now ends up in Texas, right? And you're killing it, you're crushing it, you're breaking all kinds of records, you're succeeding. And then it sounds like that's when you had this Lyme encounter. So was there a tick bite, or did your health just decline? What were the first signs there of illness?
So I don't remember any bite. Don't ever remember being bit. So I think it happened in Texas. I couldn't say for sure because maybe it was a year or two prior and it was just sitting in my body. So I'm going crazy. I'm hitting all these huge numbers and I'm on top of the world. I'm like, oh, I'm about to be able to cruise, and this is the life right here. And then I start feeling weird, like tired, depression. I don't feel right. And back then I just thought it was a mindset thing. So I'm like, oh, maybe I need to change what I'm doing. I'm not happy anymore. I got to do something else or whatever. And so as I'm falling apart, I remember the apartment I was in Dallas. I thought it was external. So I had no idea it was an internal thing because I was just pure mindset back then, like push through anything, mindset. And so I was like, oh, my life, I need to change something in my life because something is wrong. And so that's where I like go to Austin and try and do something. And I'm super confused. But then in Austin, one day I wake up and it looks like an alien in the middle of the night just like scratched me on my stomach. And this weird mark, like I have all the pictures of it.
Was it a Bartonella rash? Was it a cat scratch? Yeah.
But yeah, it was like a thick one. But Bartonella has always been my biggest problem. But and that's when I'm like, that's weird. I didn't think too much of it. And then Austin's weird, and then I go to San Diego again, and I'm in San Diego, and someone refers me to this doctor, and I go in there, and he scans my knees and looks at my joints. He's like, "You have tendonitis. That's not normal, and this and this and this." And I show him the pictures of the rashes, and he goes, "Wait a minute. Well, how long ago was this?" And I go, "I don't know. It was like 4 months ago, 5 months." And then he goes, "All right, boom," runs all these tests, and then they come back: Lyme, Bartonella, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Mycoplasma, EBV, like the whole thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, he tried to give me antibiotics, which actually what he tried to give me would have been good, but I was all anti, like try and be natural back then. So I denied it. And then I was basically in denial for a good while.
All right, so before we go into the diagnosis and all that good stuff, let's talk about why you felt it was external, not internal, as you described it, right? Because you said you had some mental health stuff going on around early college, maybe late high school. You were able to work on that through diet and supplementation. So you were very in tune with what was going on psychologically in your body.
Mm-hmm.
When this happened again, when you're crushing it and doing really good in your career in Texas, what made you think that it was purely external? Was it the same type of mental health related stuff you were experiencing, or was it physical
Mm-hmm.
and you think you're just ignoring the physical at that time?
No, it was a totally different flavor. The depression I had before, I mean, yeah, it was bad, but I mean, the Lyme depression got to a point I didn't even know was possible. But it was like it was just kind of, and at the time it wasn't as bad because it was still coming down. So it was like, frog in boiling water or whatever. But it was like things felt empty, and it was like this lack of passion type of thing. So it wasn't this hardcore depression yet, it was just like this emptiness, like no motivation, lack of passion, and just doesn't feel right. So that's where I was like, oh, I must have lost the passion for what I'm doing, I guess. And so yeah, it wasn't super obvious at first. It was a slow, it wasn't like just a drop off, it was like a slow decline.
Were there any physical symptoms while you were still in Texas before you went to San Diego, or was it mostly psychological, which is why you didn't think anything physical at the time?
Mostly psychological. And then there was some weird stuff going on with my energy. So like sometimes I'd have energy, sometimes I wouldn't, and there was this weird flux. And then I'm like wanting to lay in bed and like most of the day and stuff like that. So um and I think I was just so hard driven as well from everything I did in direct sales. Door to door is mentally one of the craziest things ever. And so I was just so hard in the mindset, push through, keep cranking away, and you can solve anything mindset. So I think that probably blinded me as well, because I had to learn how to let go of that, because that made me worse. Holding on to that made me sick.
And the doctor you went to in, I think you said it was San Diego, was it for mental health? And that mental health doctor related you, or was it a physical
Uh,
condition that you went to in San
uh,
Diego?
it was for physical.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
what were those
interesting,
symptoms?
like the fatigue, kind of weird aches, I'm getting these marks on my skin. And what's interesting is in Dallas, a doctor ran a Lyme panel on me, but it came back negative. So he ran some stuff and it came back negative, but it said EBV. So they just thought I had Epstein-Barr virus. Um, so that's where I just saw this random Lyme and negative, whatever. I don't know what that is. But yeah, it was like kind of like some weird aches. Kind of you'd wake up almost like you worked out the day before, but you didn't. And so you wake up and your body's just kind of like stiff, and you're like, that's weird. It's just weird stuff like that.
When it comes to the EBV diagnosis in Texas, you said they ran a Lyme test, it came back negative, which we know Lyme testing is horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and the EBV was positive. Generally, doctors will say EBV is something that is persistent in your body. Once you have mono, it stays with you the rest of your life. And if you have an active EBV infection, it generally means that you're run down. Your body is compromised because your immune system can manage it if you're healthy enough. So if you have an active EBV infection, there's probably some sort of contributing factor, whether it's physical stress, lack of sleep, maybe some other bacterial infection allowing it to thrive. Was that discussed when you were in Texas, or was it just, hey, you got EBV?
Just, oh yeah, ABV. That's it.
So
Yeah.
no real consideration or thought put into that. And then thankfully you got your, so why did you go to San Diego? Just because you felt not fulfilled? So you went to San Diego and then you were making a career change. What got you there again? I just want to make sure we follow the track of your movement from Texas to San Diego.
Yeah. So I went to Austin because I was going to try and do something else. Then when that failed after 2 weeks, because I was so out of it, I was like, man, solar is cool. But then all the stuff at Solar City got destroyed because Tesla bought out Solar City. So I was like, well, that doesn't really exist anymore. And then I knew people in San Diego. So I was like, well, let me try the online business again, which I'm not good at online business. So I was repeating another mistake. But I was like, oh, I can go to San Diego. I know people out there. I'll try and do the whole online thing again. And that's why I chose San Diego. And then, I was explaining what was happening, and my friend's wife was in San Diego for naturopathic school. And she said, go see this doctor and he'll see what's up.
And you said you were very natural minded, so you didn't want to take any kind of Western medicine at the time. What led you to have those beliefs? Because it's most of the time, like myself, I was very much Western. I was like, give me anything from the pharmacy and it'll just cure me, right? I had no idea what natural medicine was. So that's rare for this podcast as well. Can you give us some insight into why you had those values at the time?
It was because before, when I had the depression, they were just giving me random antidepressants, like almost like a guinea pig style. And so after that, and I read all those books, and I was like, oh, depression is actually a symptom. It can be caused by a million different things. That's where I was like, oh, I don't trust this system. And so, yeah, that's where when he prescribed antibiotics, which it actually was a good combination for what I had, because especially Rocky Mountain spotted fever. But I was like, no, I'm not taking that.
Did he explain? So this doctor, I believe, was it Schickman in San Diego?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So Dr. Schickman, when he diagnosed you, and was it a regular blood test or was it a specialty one through like an IGenics specialty lab or something?
I forgot. I could pull it up because I have all of them. I know the Lyme one was Western blot. The Bartonella and all those, I forget the exact tests they were.
Okay.
But yeah, he ran all of them. And the other thing was, he was really cool, but it was a little mechanical. And so it was like, cool, this is what you have, take this. And then, so it wasn't like, hey, this is where you're at. This is what you're up against. This is why we're prescribing this. And you need to take it for this, this, and this. It was just, cool, take this. And so I was like, I don't trust this.
No idea of how severe it can be and how it can really cause long-term complications the longer you have an undiagnosed infection. None of that was discussed.
No.
Okay. So Ashley, if you can help me out, because I know I spent a ton of time getting to know you, TJ, and your background, which I think is super important here. But let's talk about now what you're going to do to treat. I know you said you kind of blew it off for a bit, but Ashley, can you help us go through now what TJ is going to do to treat and, what that's like in the roller coaster of the treatment journey now that you have these diagnoses, TJ?
Yeah, I wanted to say really quickly too, when a doctor doesn't take the time to explain something about what's behind it, I think the patient compliance goes way down. If you actually understand the meaning of something and the reason behind it, and you have that knowledge, like I think that's really empowering, and then you're more likely to do the process and take the medication and have a better understanding. So that's unfortunate that he didn't take the time to explain anything to you. I think that's a huge misstep on his part, and I'm very picky about doctors. I don't think that's good doctoring personally.
I'm grateful for the diagnosis, but yeah, I mean, doctors, 50% doctor, 50% salesperson, right? They gotta show you why you need to do what you need to do.
Right. I mean, on one hand, it's good to have an understanding and have a diagnosis to know that you actually have something, that all these symptoms were actually related to something. But it's such a huge involved process that when we're new to Lyme, so I'm a nurse and I wasn't really trained a lot about Lyme disease. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't really know what it was. I didn't understand it. Nobody took the time to explain anything to me. So I feel like, and the Lyme community understands this. You have to become your own nurse, your own doctor. You have to do all the research. And I feel like if we had people that were more involved in understanding this, and we could get treatment quicker, that would be definitely a big step in the right direction. So once you had your diagnosis and you didn't want to take the antibiotics, what did you do next? What was the next step for your Lyme journey?
Yeah, so I was actually doing a little one-on-one with people, like I was doing coaching and stuff. And this one person, I was told her, she said, "Oh, I know this guy in Idaho, and he goes the natural route." So I called him. He had me on like a lot of the tinctures, Banderol, and stuff like that. And he would try and time it based on the rash. But I kept getting worse. And then at one point I was like, man, do I need to take these antibiotics? And he gave me doxycycline, but for some reason he only told me to take it for 2 weeks, which that's if you get first bit, right? And so I take it for 2 weeks, and then when I stopped taking it, then I went off the deep end. And that's when police showed up at my house and detained me. Was because I went so down after I went off of it, and then I stopped seeing that doctor. So
Ashley, I'm going to jump in, Ashley. I'm sorry. I just have a question on this because we've heard this a lot. I mean, Allie Hilfiger described this in her book. We've had a lot of people talk about this on this podcast where the mental health component, whether it was pre-existing and amplified by a Lyme diagnosis and treatment, or in some cases purely brought on by the Lyme and co-infection diagnosis, where these mental health conditions lead to things such as psychosis, schizophrenia, all these conditions that get mislabeled and misdiagnosed. And I don't think people realize that that's a possibility. And TJ, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's what happened? Because what my initial reaction to this is, you got strong antibiotic treatment, you were so infected with so many bugs, right? I mean, you had Lyme, Bartonella, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Mycoplasma, the list goes on and on and on. You're becoming toxic. That toxicity creates brain inflammation. It alters your brain chemistry. We know Lyme causes depression. We've proven that Lyme penetrates the brain tissue. So do you think this is sort of an advocacy piece we need to do better with about treating Lyme and these psychological conditions get worse, that doctors should be aware of this and guiding their patients?
Yeah, I think that's where I actually have the most to give. Because, you said, hey, is anything off limits? And that was kind of the whole point of the book, was one of the main things that I suffered from was intense mental. I remember at one point I was hallucinating at night, and it sounds dark, but the suicidal thoughts is kind of, I like to just say it's a symptom, right? So it's not so much, oh my God, there's suicidal thoughts. It's like, no, your brain is in that much pain, so it's like a check engine light, like, hey, something's wrong. And I remember in San Diego, I was like having suicidal thoughts, but I was so mentally bad. I went on the computer and I tried to research how to buy a gun in California, and I couldn't figure it out because I couldn't read anymore. So I was like, oh, I can't even figure this out. Maybe a good thing, but I couldn't read. I remember the very day my brain started coming back online. It was amazing. But back then I couldn't read. I was confused. I'd get in my car and start driving, and then I forget where I was going. I'd go in my bathtub to start a detox bath, and I'd lay in the bathtub for 2 hours without starting the bath. And then I'd be like, oh shit, I forgot to turn on the bathtub. Yeah, it was and I remember in this one moment thinking, I'm mentally disabled. If this is how other people feel permanently or all the time, like, how are they going to survive? And it was probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced. Like the
I'm
brain.
so sorry you had to go through that. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, the brain fog was the densest, thickest fog of like, I mean, even now I can't remember what it was like because it's so different from this reality. But it was terrible.
So would you say that's the lowest point?
Yep. The lowest point was the lowest point was being handcuffed. And it was funny because, so I'm not Mormon, but the cop that came, so I guess that morning, when I had that bad thing, I sent a text out to people of the Coronado Bridge, and I sent a screenshot of it. And I said something like, I can't take it anymore. So they got scared. I forgot I sent the text, and I was taking a detox bath. and the police surrounded my house. And I was so out of it. I was on speakerphone with my friend, and he's like, "What was that sound?" I was like, "Oh, it's just the police. They're here, I guess." And he was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah." And I go out and I go to talk to them, and they come in, and I'm sitting on the bed, and my feet are purple. I don't know why. And the police are like, "Why are your feet purple?" I was like, "I don't know." And they're like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then, yeah, the policemen, after they arrested, well, I didn't get arrested. They just handcuffed me. But when I was in the car, he asked me where I was from. I said Utah, and he goes, "Oh," he's like, "Look at my badge," and his name was Joseph Smith. So it was like a joke because Joseph Smith is the founder of Mormonism, and I'm from Utah. And so that's where I was sitting in the back of the truck and handcuffed, and I was like, I just got handcuffed by Joseph Smith, man. Like, all right, you are sick. Like, because I was in a lot of denial still. But at that point, that's when I said, all right, man, you are sick. Like, you need help. Like, this is bad. And that's when I was like, that was my lowest point, was right there.
So I had to go to an extreme place to find acceptance, the stages of grief where it's like, okay, so I'm imagining that maybe change things for you. Maybe your thoughts on, okay, what do I need to do to get better? So what did you do next? What was your first step?
Yeah, and then just to back up a quick second, that's why I kept getting sick. And like, there's all these people, I'm meditating, and like, oh, use hypnosis and just think positive and you'll be healed. And I was like and I was like, that doesn't work. So after that, that's where I moved back to Utah. And then I went on like Reddit and talked to some guy, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, I took Coartem, however you say it, and this and this, and it healed up my Rocky Mountain spotted fever or whatever." And so that's where I hit up a doctor, and I went to him and I said, "Hey, these are all the things I got. I don't care. I'll try anything." And so there's like antibiotics, IVs, ozone, and I just started going hardcore on all of that.
Do you remember the name of any of that stuff? Because I know you mentioned, well, I guess this doesn't have the exact name of it, but you had mentioned in the questions that you submitted, you try to stay in a parasympathetic mode. And I'm just really
Oh,
curious about that because I want to know more about that. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like?
yeah. So parasympathetic, that's something I discovered recently. So because right now, technically, my blood work will show I don't have Lyme or any of this stuff.
Hmm.
Well, maybe a little bit of Bartonella. And so now I'm just like recovering from mast cell histamine intolerance and all the damage. So there is like really the Lyme's probably not even active at all. Um, but yeah, I just learning about that because now it's all right. I did a lot of killing off the stuff. Now my body is all reactive and flaring up. And so now I got to learn how to stay calm, and that's where like the business, I'm like, damn, business is killing me because of the stress. But yeah, now really, if I didn't have the business stress and if I stayed in a calm state, I would probably be 100% by now, but it's just the stress and everything keeps knocking me back.
Yeah, I feel like stress has a huge impact on Lyme symptoms. I feel like it makes everything worse and it creates an inflammatory state. For me, it makes my brain fog worse. It makes my pain worse. I end up in the hospital with random, IBS exacerbation, migraines, all the fun stuff that comes with that. And it's hard because if I had $1 for every time I had a doctor tell me, you just need less stress in your life. And I'm like, okay, well, have you been outside? That's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, I know. I was joking the other day. I was like, man, if I could just go to Playa del Carmen for like 3 months, maybe I would be, I'd be good. But yeah, now the business is a constant battle because it's like I got 60 sales reps and employees and all this liability and crazy stuff, which is, I'm like a type A workaholic kind of guy, but at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe I gotta be type A minus and be healthy instead.
So I'm curious though, the doctor that you went to and you started doing treatment and you said you did antibiotics and all of that. So
Oh yeah.
that's kind of like the kill phase of it. Did they
Oh, I
do
did.
anything about like your gut health? Because you said your gut was really bad. Did they help
Yep.
you with that before you went into all of that?
Gut, they were, probiotics and stuff, but I was going crazy too. I was probiotics. I was making my own kimchi and sauerkraut and kefir, however it said, kefir, kefir,
Yeah.
and from raw goat milk, um, kombucha. I was going hard on the gut because if I wasn't, the antibiotics just flamethrower down there, destroying everything.
Right.
So I'm taking tons of kill and then tons of hopefully my gut stays intact. I was kind of doing it simultaneously with ozone, sauna. Like I figured out how to do my own ozone. I bought my own ozone generator,
What kind of
and
ozone were you using, TJ? Was it, we know there's different types.
I bought a longevity EXT50 ozone generator,
So
and
was it with
but
like ear, nose, like, so, was it
oh
was it blood ozone? There's so many, there's rectal, right? There's so many different types of ozone. It's ways
yeah,
to administer it, I should say.
oh yeah, my bad. I tried rectal. It didn't seem as powerful. And so, this is not something that probably should be recommended, but I did DIV because to do it MAH into the bag is you need someone there. And so I just calculated. I was like, all right, I'm doing 2 ozone IVs a week, $450 times 2 ozone generators, $1,000 and this and this. And so I paid someone in Germany over Skype $50. And I was taking a glass syringe, filling it up with ozone, and then slowly injecting it directly into my vein, which is controversial. A lot of people say, no, it's fine. And then other people like, don't ever do that. But that's what I did. So,
What are your thoughts on the ozone? Because some people say it's a good detox tool. Others say that it's very much antimicrobial, where it can actually kill a lot of these infections. Where do you land on the value of ozone and specifically how it helped you, TJ?
oh, I love ozone. I don't do it now because now it's all about healing, like rejuvenating the body. Where I guess some people would argue ozone does that as well for maybe your mitochondria or whatever. But back then it was I had to kill all that stuff off. And so for me, for killing off this for the pathogens, ozone was amazing. Now I don't do it. Like I don't even do sauna that much either. Like it's weird. I used to sauna every single day and ozone and now it's no ozone, no sauna, but like meditate and try and do these other things. So it's changed over time, but for killing the pathogens, ozone for me was amazing.
Was there a bad Herxheimer reaction from it? Like, was it something that you felt pretty quickly?
When I would do it myself or at the place, my brain would feel better instantly. So the brain fog would get knocked down a little notch, like instant. So it wasn't like a big herx for me. It was more like a relief.
Ashley, what are your thoughts? Because I mean, with your, obviously being a nurse, being a trained medical professional, Ashley, does, rectal ozone, administering your own ozone, I'm sure it's something they probably are like would scold, right, in medical school, but yet it brought TJ such relief. And that's where I think there's such a discrepancy of we'll call Western medicine and then what it takes, for people to get better with Lyme disease, especially considering the financial constraints, right? TJ outlined so well that it was so expensive. He ran the numbers and he did it himself. Yeah, maybe there was some risk there. He did it carefully, but I just feel like there's two different worlds and two different views to this, actually. And you're kind of in both worlds, right? So what are your thoughts on it all?
So definitely, I have done ozone as well, and in the doctor's office, I've had my upper back injected with ozone, and then I've had ozone to try to treat my interstitial cystitis. I unfortunately did not have any relief from it. It didn't really help me, but maybe it wasn't the right strength. Maybe it wasn't the right dose. I would say people do injectables at home all the time. You have home health nurses come and administer medication to various patients, most likely cancer patients, and to the port and things like that. Sometimes they have like a 3-day IV. But I would say, the risk is anytime you're injecting the skin, there's always a risk of infection. There's a risk of blood clot. You know, you're crossing the skin barrier that protects you from microbials. So that's always an issue. So if somebody's not being clean and safe and sterile, I think that would be the biggest risk as far as that goes. But I mean, I would think that you would definitely need proper training like you do with anything else. And it's like, if you get antibiotics or you get any medication from the pharmacy, what does it say on there? It has a list of side effects. And then underneath the side effects, it says, your doctor prescribed this because they believe this medication outweighs the side effects. So I would say it's the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's a risk that you're willing to take for yourself. And I
Yeah.
think as long as it's being done in a way that's safe and clean, and maybe we need better training so people can do that themselves. I mean, I think that's amazing, the relief that you got from that, because that's what we want. We don't always want to take something and feel terrible. We don't
Yeah.
always want to hurt. Every time we want to feel good, we want to feel better. That's the whole point. That's the whole reason that I feel like we do a lot of this. You know, we want the good side effects. Put that on the label.
Yeah. I think when you're really sick too, so it's funny, sometimes I'll describe coffee enemas to people and they'll be like, what? Why would you ever do that? And I said, if you think that's weird, you just never have been that sick.
Exactly.
Right? Like right now, I was in the Facebook group the other day and everyone's talking about drinking their own urine. And I was like, oh, snap. I haven't seen that before. But, you know, I'm like, all right. I mean, hey, if that's working for people, then I guess that's working for people, you know? So I guess when you're that sick, I mean, my first one I did is pretty stupid. I used duct tape for the catheter to stick to my arm because I didn't have medical tape. But it was like, dude, I had nothing to lose really.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, right? I mean, that's true. So TJ, you know, with the mental health stuff, what was the biggest game changer in the mental health symptom relief? Because a lot of people that are suffering from Lyme have the physical and the mental as well. And I know you shared a lot about that. Was ozone helpful in that area, or was the antibiotics, as you were killing a lot of things with antibiotics, you think more effective, or something else?
So yeah, this one is very fascinating, especially since I came from such a hardcore mindset thing. The main thing that helped the mental was just overall healing of Lyme. So reduction of the pathogens, the body working better. That was it. You know, the meditation and all that stuff and the EMDR, and I had to do all that. And it's very helpful, but it was like 70% of it was purely Lyme treatment. I remember there was a flavor of brain fog that I had. And after I took Coartem, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Coartem or whatever. I took that and there was a flavor of brain fog that went away and never came back. And then as I started getting better and better and better, I remember all of a sudden I could read again. Like before I was reading and I just saw the words. I'm like, okay. But you know how like you can read a book and your brain's firing off and the dopamine's learning all this stuff and making connections. I didn't have that. And I remember it came back. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can read again. And I can problem solve again. And like all these things started coming back. And then, oh, I'm driving around and the sunset looks good. Right. That came back. And
Wow.
it literally was from the, you know, treating the Lyme. Now it's more, you know, different stuff. But in the beginning, like it was, the Lyme was sick. I'm inflamed. My brain's not working right. And my brain's broken. And it's not going to work right until it's fixed.
TJ, that just gave me chills. That way you described that. I have to tell you, that was very inspirational and hopeful to people listening to this that have been suffering and don't see any kind of relief, because I think we all know, you know, the fact that you were able to look at a sun, you know, the sun and be able to just smile and feel joy again, right? When you feel so empty, you know, that's a really powerful statement. And, you know, you talk about Coartem. So that's the Babesia medication, right? It's the anti-malaria that they use for Babesia, correct?
Yep.
And that's just kind of, people are going to ask us. I'm just going to spell it because I guarantee you we're going to get people DMing us if I don't spell it right now, because I had to Google it myself. It's Coartem, and they're tablets that are, you know, strong anti-malarials used for Babesia. And that's something that was a pretty strong game changer where after you took what, a couple of doses of that, TJ, then your brain fog dissipated where you can read again, and then started to have these feelings of like emotions come back, joy, happiness, etc.
No, back when I took that, the other stuff came later, but it was just my brain fog. There was like this weird flavor of it that went away and never came back. I still had brain fog. It just wasn't certain. It's hard to describe, but it just never came back after that. And the doctor didn't give me it the correct way. You're supposed to like pulse it a certain way, and you're not supposed to take it like too high of a dose. But I took like a high dose every day for 2 weeks, which you're not supposed to do. But I didn't know that. But after that, it just knocked one of the things out. And so then it's like, cool, now I'm just progressing. So I mean, the other stuff came later slowly. It didn't all happen from that. It's just, I just vividly remember a significant change from that.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this is gradual, right? I mean, this is something where little by little, as you're treating and as you're getting the bugs down, you're killing off a wide variety of pathogens, and as you're rebuilding your body, your mental health is improving, your brain fog is improving, and of course, everything else that you're doing is allowing you to have less physical symptoms as well. But what other physical symptoms did you have, TJ? You talked about, fatigue, pain. Were there any other physical symptoms you had that you can share with us?
There'd always be this weird pressure behind my eyes. Stomach upset, nausea, fast, I'd have to fast all the time. I didn't get too much of the joint stuff, but my whole body, it felt like a truck while I was sleeping, ran me over, backed up and did it again. And then the biggest one, other than the mental stuff, was the fatigue. And it's really hard to describe how crushing the fatigue was, but how I like to say it is the fatigue was so bad it hurt. And I'd lay in bed for 2 hours, like, get up, gotta get up, you gotta get up, and then finally you get up. It's like you gotta go to the grocery store. It's like climbing Mount Everest or something, brushing your teeth. It's like, oh my goodness, right? And the fatigue just made everything so difficult. And I just remember the crushing fatigue was probably the most crippling of anything. Because like if you have energy, but you have pain, you can kind of, well, it depends on the pain. I should probably not say that, but you have some aches. It's like you can do stuff. You have your joints hurt, but you have energy. I mean, you can still kind of do stuff. But if you're completely depleted and your mitochondria are not doing anything, I mean, that's a rough day.
So when you had this I'll call it psychotic break, and I hope that's not an inappropriate term, but when you had this, this wall you ran into where the cop showed up at your place, that's when you realized the aggressive antibiotics you were given were causing you to have this real extreme reaction. Did you stop taking the antibiotics and did you pivot to another doctor? I kind of want to blend that experience with where you pivoted to, which was the IV ozone, the coffee enemas, the herbal treatment, etc.
Yeah. So it was actually the doctor did not know how to administer the antibiotic. I don't know why he gave me doxycycline either, but I think he just went online and read Lyme treatment, doxycycline for 2 weeks. So I took it for 2 weeks. And then when I stopped is when everything came back even harder. So it was almost like everything went into hiding. I stopped the doxycycline and then it all came out even stronger. And so it just hit me so hard instantly after I stopped that I just lost it. And so it wasn't that the antibiotic gave me that problem. It was the administration of how it was done gave me the problem.
Yeah, and a lot of these antibiotics, I mean, we've had researchers on this podcast share with us that they will do all these studies where they treat with antibiotics. They see all of these active spirochetes, all the active bacteria in your body that make you sick and symptomatic. They shapeshift essentially, where they become these round balls. They look like they're just benign, right? The immune system thinks they're just no big deal. And then as soon as the antibiotics stop, what happens? They unravel and they form the spirochete form again, and they go to town and start wreaking havoc, creating inflammation, making you sick, going into your brain, drilling away, right? So it's very consistent with what we're finding in these research studies, which is you have to do more than just one antibiotic, right? Sometimes a cocktail of antibiotics, or there's obviously alternatives as well, but you have to go after it in the stationary phases, in the active phases, bolster the immune system. It's a multi-pronged approach. And I think that was kind of your realization that it wasn't going to be a simple take it doxycycline and get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I mean, everyone's different. I had to do antibiotics, but Yeah, I remember at one point I was trying to get off antibiotics, and I did hyperthermia and all this stuff. And clarithromycin always helped me a lot. And the doctor would always try and get me off of it. I couldn't get off of it. And then I did hyperthermia. And then that's when I went like a really long time without having to take an antibiotic again. And so like the goal was never to be on the antibiotics. It was like, oh, you have to be on these right now, but eventually we got to get you off of these. So yeah, I never want to stay on them, but it was like it was necessary for a good while.
Right. If you wanted to have any kind of life, you had to be on antibiotics, and I, you do what you got to do, right? So we totally get that. Tell us about the hyperthermia. Where did you have the hyperthermia done? And I mean, obviously, it's a very scary experience. You're desperate. You want to feel better, but I mean, they're boiling you up, right? I mean, they're knocking you out. They're putting you under. They're pumping you with antibiotics, and they're raising your temperature high enough where it's kind of like boiling you over.
Yeah, that hyperthermia was intense. So what happened was I stopped taking clarithromycin. And someone had told me about a hyperthermia clinic in Utah. So it's different than the Germany one. And I crashed so hard that I hit them up and I said, hey, I'm going to see your facility this week. I'm going to come and look at it. And they said, we're booked. I said, no, you don't understand. I already bought my ticket. I'm flying in. I'm going to see you Friday. And they're like, okay. Right. And I just like forced my way in. And then I started the treatment, and it was 2 weeks. And you're in the suit and you're strapped down on this bed, and they fill the suit up with hot water, and you're trapped for an hour and you're awake. They don't do the antibiotics at this one. And so for an hour, they just raise your body temperature as much as they can. And yeah, those 2 weeks were super rough. And then you do it at home after, so you can do it yourself. But yeah, I was like on the 5th day, I had to stop it early, and I'm normally not that kind of guy. And yeah, I just cried. I went in the parking lot, I cried. I was like, dude, what the hell? Are you like, you quit and all this stuff? And so yeah, I actually had one moment I couldn't even do the whole thing. And but after that, I was doing it at home, and yeah, I went off antibiotics for a very long time. I think it was like a year or something. I didn't have to take an antibiotic for that long. And then I like had to retake one for a little bit and then go back off. But the hyperthermia took me to the next step.
Question about that, because I know in Germany, don't they make you unconscious? Don't or they
Yeah.
have conscious sedation? So were you conscious this whole time?
Conscious, awake. And it was weird. Like I had to tell the nurses, because like sometimes they'd be like freaking out or something, like, oh, and they're like saying all these stressful things while I was in there, like reading my stuff. And I had to tell them, like, dude, like I can hear what you're saying. And it's scary that if you're, remember, I'm a person in here. And I actually I made a specific one. I was like, you have to be in the room with me every time I do this, because I trust you. And I needed like that person in there with me. And like, yeah, I remember you're just looking up at this TV on the ceiling, and you start getting warm. And then after like 5-8 minutes, you can't even understand what's going on the TV anymore. And I guess like my dad tried to watch one time, and he couldn't watch it after that, because like I guess one time like I was like shaking back and forth or something, like going all weird. And so he was like, all right, I'm not gonna watch this again. So it was rough, but I'm glad I did it.
Wow.
That's intense. I don't know if I could handle that. So kudos to you for tolerating something that I would most definitely faint, and I would leave after the first day. So, I mean, if you made it to 5 days, that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks, and then you did it at your house, and doing it at your house was just as hard almost. But like one time I got a thermometer, because one time I did it too hot and I actually burnt myself. Like I got in there and I burnt myself. So I use a thermometer to make sure, like, cool, it's not going to burn me at this degree. And yeah, I did it at my by myself for, I don't know, year and a half, and then I would do it randomly after that.
Wow. How did you feel when it was over? Like, I mean, the fact that you're getting, I'll say, confusion from it, right? Mental brain fog or confusion where you can't even understand the TV show. Were you getting such benefits, and that's why you kept doing it for a year? I mean, there must have been some positives that kept you doing this torture session that you and Ashley just described.
Yeah, no, it was giving me relief. I was off antibiotics, and yeah, for a good while, it's kind of like doing the ozone. I would feel I'd feel better after. And so it gave a relief of symptoms, and that was enough for me to keep doing it. And then now it's too intense on the body because it's a stressor.
Yeah.
So I don't do it anymore. But definitely glad I did it.
Where did you, are you comfortable sharing the facility where you did this hyperthermia? Because we haven't heard this type where you get into this, like, so it sounds like you go in, like, it's like a suit that you get into with water and it boils up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have pictures of me in this suit. It's pretty intense, but I forgot the name of it. It was in Bountiful, Utah. I could probably find it on Google Maps, but forgot what it was called. I could find the name. But yeah,
if
they did
somebody
it.
is interested, oh, is it Life Health and Research Center, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds like it actually. Life Health. Let me see.
Yeah, Life Health and Research Center in Bountiful, Utah.
Life Health and Research Center. Let me
Yeah, only clinic offering whole body hyperthermia. That's got to
That
be
is
it,
it.
right?
Yep, I'm looking at it. That's the one.
Okay.
And yeah, it was good. I mean, there's some things could be improved. Oh, one of my pictures is on
On their website?
on the Google Maps. Yeah, it's
Yes.
me. It's me after I get out and I'm all destroyed.
Oh,
Man.
But yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, I did stem cells after and the whole thing. Um,
Tell us about the stem cells. So you, I know from your our offline chat and your pre-interview questionnaire, you went to Tijuana for stem cells, right? So again, you're kind of, I feel like you're being resourceful, trying to manage your budget, but also optimize, you know, your treatment modalities and get the most effective treatment possible.
yeah, that's kind of like why the book is Walk the Line, because yeah, I had to walk that fine line of you got to make money, but you can't stress yourself out making money because it'll hurt you. But you got to treat yourself, but you need the money. So it's like I got life responsibility, but I'm trying to. So it's a constant battle. But Tijuana, I went there because the stem cells are cheaper. It was really good at the time. I actually don't know if I recommend it anymore because they've changed dramatically. But yeah, for a good while, I'd go there. When I first went there, they denied me because I was too sick. They said this won't do anything. You have too much Lyme. But then as I got better, I went quite frequently, like once every 3-4 months, and I'd feel good for a few weeks and a lot less inflammation and everything. Maybe I did too many of the stem cells though. But it helped me for a while. I wouldn't necessarily do it right now though.
So there's I'm sensing there's some caution being provided here, and I want to ask a little more about it, right? So you said
Yeah.
they changed. So if you could just tell us a little more what you mean about how they've changed since you went, and also why you think you did a little too much. Is there such a thing as too much stem cells, and what kind of effect does that have?
So there's different, I forget how they're calling it. There's different phases of how old the stem cells are. And at first, like it was very family feeling. You see a doctor, they talk to you, they do all this stuff. But then it got to the point where it's like, cool, you want some stem cells? Come in, wham, bam, see you later. And so maybe it's not as, you know, and so if you can get mast cell, you can flare up, you can cause others problems if you get bad stem cells. There was one which was recommended by a clinic, and I was going to get stem cells at this place, and then I researched it, and I guess their supplier had a bad batch before, and so yeah, stem cells. I mean, you definitely don't want to just inject anything in there. So that's where now I'm like, I don't know if I go there again. I like going there though. It's fun going to Tijuana, and it's a good time. Like, yeah, I'm in a different country getting treated nice. And but yeah, I mean, I did a lot of it, but it's not stem cells. I would say don't just randomly do. You got to make sure you're getting it done right.
And when you say the histamines and stuff, we've had a lot of people say, we've had some people have transformational stories with stem cells, and other people say, hey, look, I had issues with histamines. I went and got stem cells, and I felt so much worse for about a year, right? So we've heard both sides of the spectrum, and I think that the general consensus is with our Lyme litter doctors we've had on is if you have issues with histamines and you have this inflammation, predisposition, the stem cells will create more inflammation for quite a while they're repairing your body, and that could actually make you feel worse, right? So I think there's that threshold you have to make a self-analysis of, will this potentially be a higher risk for me based on how I am in my own health, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So what else have you done? I mean, is there anything? I mean, is there anything left? Right?
Man, I hyperthermia, stem cells, ozone, UVIV.
What's UVIV? That's essentially like light therapy, where the
Yeah,
light goes through your blood, right?
yeah, you can see it like in your arm too. It's kind of cool. Like I had a picture where you could see the light in there, and they just keep it in there while your blood flows for a while, and it's supposed to kill off stuff. Coffee enemas, um, psychedelics.
Oh, let's talk
Uh,
about psychedelics. Rich would kill me if I didn't ask more about this. Rich is fascinated with psilocybin and psychedelics and all kind,
yeah.
So there's a lot of disagreement, I'll say, or debate about psychedelics in the chronic Lyme community, but also in we'll call it the Western medicine community. So Rich is a huge advocate of psychedelics, that they're actually going to help you. Ashley was asking earlier about your nervous system, right? Your parasympathetic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system. These studies are showing that psychedelics can be used to help people, not only in the chronic Lyme community, but people that are drug addicts, lifelong, heroin users. Their brain scans are showing their brains are significantly different than what a healthy brain should be. They're using psychedelics, and their brain pathways are being reset to what we consider normal after psychedelics, right? And there's a lot of these studies happening with Lyme too. So, do you know anything about these studies? And if not, what was your experience like using psychedelics, and which ones specifically did you use?
Yeah, I tried to sign up for a DMT study actually. So now I pretty much done them all. And what has helped me a lot was combining breath work with the psychedelic. And like the breath work alone helps, and the psychedelic alone helps. But for some reason, when I combine the two, it's a very healing, relaxing thing. And so for me, it's like my body has all this trauma, the histamine, it's reacting to everything, but the psychedelics calm that down. And so like, yeah, like DMT and all that, that's kind of like my favorite one. But here's what was interesting. So I was talking to this guy, I think it's Mark Wallen. He wrote It Didn't Start With You, I believe, because I did a family constellation therapy, because your family systems affects your body. And I was telling him it was interesting because if I went and played basketball right now, I would feel like crap, like tomorrow and for 3 days, right? It'd flare me up and I'd feel bad. But one time I took LSD, and me and my friend wanted to play basketball. I said, whatever, I don't care. And I played basketball, and it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt me. I was fine the next day and 3 days after. So I exercised, and I was like, what is that? Right? That's weird. And so it's like, it put me in that different state where my body was in a more parasympathetic healing state to where my body was fine. And so that's why right now, because I have this histamine intolerance and all this stuff, like really, if I keep my body in that calm, safe state, then I believe I would get to the finish line. Because like right now, my brain's sharp. I can function really at a high level, but there's still some problems, and I can't exercise, and I still can't do certain things. But I think if I could get myself in that calm state at where I'm at right now and stay there like almost all of the time, it'd probably be like a couple months and I'd be able to exercise again, is what I think. Just because of that. So that's why I'm fascinated by it. It's like the Lyme, the trauma, your brain, it's so used to reacting a certain way, but you go take some mushrooms and now your brain's in a different state, and it's going to be acting in a different manner. And then you can form those new pathways while you're there. And so I think, I mean, this stuff should all be legalized, in my opinion. But I could go on and on about this stuff for a very long time.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to talk more about this if you're interested in a follow-up, because there's a whole world here that I think can be explored and bring a lot of relief to people. And I always, Rich and you would completely agree on this. And I don't know enough about the science, and I'm always worried. I said we have to be careful because we need to know what the risks are and to do it properly, because you can't just go say, I'm gonna go take some mushrooms, I'm gonna take some LSD, right? You have to do your homework, and do it the right way, so you're not gonna cause problems. And you hear some horror stories where people are trying psychedelics, and they say it alters their behavior or their mood or their personality and it's like a permanent switch gets flipped on them, right? So there's those risks that make me anxious. But I think, we know Johns Hopkins is doing studies in psychedelics, and there's value there. So I think as we start to understand better how these psychedelics impact the brain, we'll be able to develop a safer way to administer them. But a lot of people like yourself, TJ, are learning from the research that's currently available and having great success. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I think too, it's not so much like maybe some people think they got to go take some big thing of LSD and see all this wild stuff, right? You can take a small, you could do a small amount of mushrooms or whatever, like a microdose, and then go in nature and meditate or do some breath work and journal or heal a relationship or what. Like that's more like, so when I'm using it, I'm kind of meditating, have an intention, and it will tell me something, or I mean, I'll learn. You can whatever. It's telling me something, or my brain, right, and then you implement it in your life, right? And so it's not like I'm going out taking these huge doses. I'm taking like a small, medium dose and rewiring and doing some work, and then using that in my life. So it's not like let me just take this huge dose, sit on my couch, and hopefully this changes me.
It is more pieces to it. It's not just taking it and letting it go. There's a lot you're doing and you're experimenting with as well. You said, like, right, the breath work and the psychedelics are beneficial, and you have to really be open to it. And I think I think there's going to be a lot here in the future, and I hope we continue to put more research money behind it. And it's promising to see that some universities are researching this. So
yeah.
And anything else, TJ, that we haven't talked about that's been helpful in your healing journey from a treatment standpoint?
Oh man, I am one of those people that it's probably a little too much on the aggressive side with treatments, because I've done a lot. Cowden protocol, herbs, antibiotics, different diets. I tried carnivore.
Okay, two quick questions. That Cowden protocol, indifferent, or was it helpful, or not really sure?
Helpful. Couldn't have done it by itself though. So I still needed antibiotics with it, but it definitely helped, because there was one, it was called Kumanda by NutraMedics.
Yep.
And I would immediately feel a difference when I took that one, like the Bartonella. Like it was like, oh, I take it, and I was like, oh, this is working. And so yeah, there's definitely helped. But could they have done it by themselves? I don't think so. Well, I tried it by themselves and it didn't work. So yeah.
And I'm sorry I interrupted you. You were listening at some others, and I apologize.
Oh, yeah, carnivore.
The carnivore. Yeah, I forgot. I thought about brain frog. Was carnivore effective? We had somebody come on, and he said that actually him and his wife, they both had Lyme. He said that when he cut over to the carnivore diet, he was, to me, the magic bullet always scares me, right? He said the carnivore diet was the game changer. He was cured. That's the answer to Lyme. But I mean, for him, he genuinely believed it, and maybe it was effective for him. But how was your take on the carnivore diet change for Lyme?
Didn't work for me. Back in the day when I was living in Utah again, I did keto, which I did it for a month and a half, and it knocked a layer of brain fog away, and that never came back. But then I just started eating low carb after that. So keto helped. Low carb helps. I tried carnivore, because they're trying, why is your stomach, reacting to so many things right now? And I tried carnivore, couldn't do it. Just straight up crazy diarrhea every day. I was feeling worse. And then after 4 or 5 days, I said, all right, if it's not helping me, it's probably hurting me. I've given it 4 or 5 days, and then I'm worse. So I stopped. But I know some people that swear by it. So for me, wasn't what was needed, but for others, maybe. And it's hard to eat that much meat. Like, as much as a ribeye, how good it tastes. I mean, it's a lot of chewing, a lot of steak. Like it was kind of hard to eat like that. But I mean, if it would have helped me though, I would have kept going. But it just wasn't. It wasn't the thing that I needed. And that's like we were talking about earlier. The hard thing with Lyme is this person's solution is going to be way different than this person's solution. There's going to be some similarities maybe, but it's just they're so different. Like every person's got such a unique situation. It's like, how do you, effectively help everybody?
Yeah, TJ, we call our podcast the Lyme Quilt Podcast, right? Because you're right. what helps me may be different than what helps you, may be different than what helps Ashley. And what we like to provide is everybody's experiences, which is the quilt, right? Your story, my story, Ashley's story, collectively, going on 400 different individual stories in the Lyme experience. People can listen and pick and choose and try to learn what's going to work for them, because it's going to be different, right? But when you run out of options, or you want to have somebody to talk to about what options are out there and what their experiences were, that's where your experience and what you're sharing is going to be so valuable to the community and listening to this podcast, right? So as much as I agree, I also think there's so much value in what you're sharing here for everybody listening.
Yeah, I guess for me, when I was thinking, oh, how do I help as many people as possible? It's like, all right, I guess I can, share my story, share what worked for me. If some of those pieces help someone put their puzzle together, then awesome.
Ashley, do you have any questions? I want to talk about Walk the Lyme, but I just want to make sure that I'm not, going too far ahead. If you have any questions, anything we talked about so far.
I am curious about you said that you wrote a book, so I want to know where we get it, how do we access it? I am excited to read it. So what's the best place to find it?
You can go on Amazon, walkthelyme.com, I guess is probably the easiest way just to find it real quick. So walkthelyme.com, and it's basically a website with a link to Amazon. There's some other stuff I wrote on there, like poems and stuff, but I forgot. I also tried bee venom therapy.
Oh, really?
So that was another wild one where I shipped in bees and had them sting me. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many things I've done that.
Well, tell us a little more about that, TJ, before the book, right? Because that's something we hear about a lot, and we've had people on from the leading bee venom therapy community, and people that it's again been transformational in their personal experience, and others who have not had success. So how was it for you? And first of all, how do you I guess you'll do anything if you're that sick, but I mean, stinging yourself seems like such an unpleasant experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like it's weird because I'd done peptides and all sorts of stuff, and that helped me for a while and then stopped working. And it was kind of the same thing with the bees. But my only problem was I couldn't get more than, you're supposed to do 10 stings at a time. And I couldn't get past 2. And once I started doing 3, I'd get like neural weird stuff going on. So it would help me feel better with my symptoms, but it would give me other symptoms when I would try to actually get to their effective dose. And so I tried it for a while, and I was like, I don't know if this is really helping me. And then when I tried to ship in more bees, since Las Vegas is so hot, they would die in the mail. And so I was like, I'll just stop doing it. And so definitely that was the one that gave the most, regular person, the intrigue factor. Like, what? I'm like, hey, you want to sting me with a bee? And they're like, what is going on? But it actually felt good when I was doing it, but it was giving me weird neural issues when I tried to do go more than 2 bees at a time.
Tell us about the peptides. What kind of peptides do you take? We've heard about BPC 157. There's a whole bunch of others. That's the one we hear about the most. Do you recall what type of peptides you use and which ones were effective?
Yeah, so I took, this is 2 years ago, thymosin alpha, thymosin beta, it's like beta 4 or whatever. And then what was LP 37 or whatever, and BBC 157. And then there was like some sleep one. The thymosin ones were supposed to help transition the immune system to be better at intracellular, since the Lyme, hides in there. And then the BPC 157 was supposed to heal my stomach. It started working so good at first. I was like, oh, I'm healed. And that lasted like a month and a half, 2 months. And then I felt sick again. The BPC 157 was good. And actually at this point, I'm going to meet with a doctor next month named Dr. Seeds in LA. And I'm going to explore peptides again. But with him, I'm going to tell him, hey, what are the best peptides for healing the stomach and for keeping the body in a calm state? And I'm going to play around with that and see, because if I can keep my body in that parasympathetic, then I can probably heal. So I'm gonna try it again. But before, the thymosin alpha and beta, it made a huge impact like right away. 2 months, I thought, oh, this is it. I'm healed from Lyme. and then I got sick again. So
Yeah, we had Jeremy Foster was on our podcast about a year and a half ago, and he had a very positive experience with peptides as well for stomach issues, inflammation, pain, nervous
yeah,
system. And we've had a lot of doctors on recently too who discussed the benefits of peptides, and they're really relatively low risk too. So I think that's a nice factor about them. But you know, I want to come back to Ashley's question, and I apologize,
yeah,
Ashley. I know I totally went back from the book, right? But Walk the Lyme is the name of your book. It's walkthelyme.com. The subtitle is From Knocking on Death's Door to Building a Multi-million-dollar Business, right? So I'm guessing you wrote this book based on your personal life experience of Lyme disease and having to work and fund your treatment. And this is sort of a guide for others. Give us an idea of what's in this book and
yeah.
what people will get if they buy it and read it.
So why I wrote it was at one point I got COVID when it first came out. And I was like, if I was to die right now, what would I regret doing? And I was like, I should have wrote the book because everyone told me to write a book. And really the only goal with it, like I'll never make my money back on it, was just to give validation and hope to someone with Lyme. And so when I was in that super dark time in San Diego and being handcuffed and stuff, I just felt so alone with the intensity of what I was experiencing that I wanted to be very honest about my journey so that when someone reads it, they feel heard and they're not alone. And then here's also what I did and was able to achieve. So they're like, oh, if I keep going and I keep trying things and I keep, because I tried a lot of stuff, then I can also improve, right? Because I couldn't work for a year and a half and now I have 60 sales reps and employees, right? I'm not 100% healthy, but I'm definitely operating at a different level, And so that was the whole goal. And, it was risky writing it. There was a moment where I was like, do I really want to have all my family and friends and everyone that knows me read this? I was like, you only live once and, publish. But yeah, I don't hold back. It's, this is what I was thinking. These are the thoughts I was having. And this is what I actually went through.
So what do you're working at? I think you're still in the solar business, right? And that's what you're currently doing today.
Yep. Got back into solar because I started running out of money in Utah because I was selling stuff off eBay and stuff, and started selling solar again, and then wanted to do my own thing to kind of be better in the industry. And yeah, right now we made a big transition, probably one of the most stressful things I've ever experienced. And so that's where, I have those conflicting feelings of, all right, the stress is kind of intense, but I'm just kind of a driven person. I can't really stop my brain from wanting to do that. And so, yeah, the solar company, it's, we bring people in, use it so they can use it as a vehicle to change their life and, give homes protection from electricity bills. But yeah, it takes up pretty much almost all my time.
Looking ahead, in addition to exploring other peptides, what are your other plans to continue working on your health, right? Because I think now we realize that even once we hit our goal, we want to continue to maintain our health. So you want to, your next goal is to be able to, hey, I want to be able to exercise and not have to experience pain after going out and playing basketball, right? That's kind of your goal now. Mm-hmm. So what are your next steps to get there, if any, beyond the peptides? And then what do you see being a maintenance plan for you to keep your health in a good place while you're growing your business? And you're going to have stressors in life. It's just a reality, right? So what is your plan moving forward?
Yeah. So as of right now, main focus is parasympathetic. So there's this thing called M-Wave by HeartMath. Using that, some neurofeedback. I am now meditating 20 minutes twice a day, and I just joined a yoga thing. So I want to do MMA and lift weights, but I'm like, all right, you can't do that yet. And so, but the relaxing yoga, when I leave, it's a huge difference. So all I'm doing is relaxing yoga, like the most relaxing one they have. I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times a week. Continue working with this doctor in Calgary. And if I keep my body parasympathetic, if I heal the stomach, I think there might be some SIBO stuff going on. So if I get the stomach under control, keep the body in a healing state, and then once I can work out again, that'll be my marker. And with the business, start to step away, delegate more. And then really it's, can I exercise again? Keep the histamine stuff at bay. And then with the business, can I get it to where I'm mostly working on growing it and not so much doing all the tasks? And really, the bigger goal is how I can give back, using all of that as a platform, give back to people with medical stuff. And I even thought about, hey, what if we all went into nature and did breath work and like talk to each other about what we're going through? And it'd be cool if we could use psychedelics too, but it's not legal yet. The combination would be even better. But yeah, even stuff like that, like even tonight, people are coming over to my house tonight and we're doing a breathwork session like for an hour. And we're all just gonna like do it and talk about stuff going on, because like when you change your state, now you're open and the walls are down and then you can actually heal. And so I'm exploring avenues for that as well. And so really it's be able to exercise again, and then how can I give a bigger impact? How can I impact and help people in the best way from where I'm coming from for people to receive? And that's where I'm at.
TJ, if somebody wants to touch base with you or follow you on social media, what's the best point of contact in addition to your website for your book that you just described earlier? Are you on social? Do you have handles? Do you have a personal website?
So I think my Facebook, facebook.com/TaylorJamesTJ. That's another good way. They can email me through the Walk the Lyme as well. Instagram, I'm on there as Taylor James TJ, but I never check my messages on there. I'm on I'm on TikTok, but I don't go on TikTok. So someone posts my stuff for me, because I don't want to be on TikTok and I don't want to be on Instagram like doing the death scroll. So yeah, walkthelyme.com. Email me there, or my Facebook is the best.
Ashley, do you have any questions before we conclude this really powerful and inspirational interview?
I think I just want to say to TJ that I find you so inspiring, and like I get teary-eyed hearing you talk. I can hear the hope in your voice and this huge progress that you've made and all of the things that you're working on. And I think it's so amazing. The breath work, mental health, the parasympathetic, like healing your gut. Like I can relate to so many things you're saying. Like you inspire me and you give me hope. And I imagine that you're doing that to all the people listening. So I want to say thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, this podcast was awesome. It was like one of the coolest, most prepared ones I've ever seen. So it's been good being on here.
Well, TJ, we are so happy to have found you and met you and now have you be a part of our Tick Bootcamp family along with Ashley and everybody else. So thank you, thank you, thank you. For me, this has been such a powerful, educational, inspirational, hope-filled interview. So thank you, TJ. And we really can't wait. We can't wait to have some follow-ups with you. I know our listeners are going to want to hear more about psychedelics and a ton of other topics. So this is not the end of TJ if he's willing to come back and have some more deep dive discussions with us.
Oh yeah, we can riff on psychedelics any day.